Individual on YouTube by the name of, I believe it's BeauClayton, and he posted something in response to a video that was derived from this program. This is where I talked with Morse Code, who used to call in here regularly, and it was about atheism and my contention with atheism, why I believe it's wrong. So BeauClayton contends that all reasoning is not circular by nature. Okay, he goes on to attempt demonstrating this by pointing out the scientific method, and he goes through and marks them down. So I know most of the listeners here are well acquainted with the scientific method, but I think it'd do us well maybe to refresh our memory. Okay, with the scientific method, we make observations. Okay, we form a testable, unifying hypothesis to explain these observations. We deduce predictions from the hypothesis, and we search for confirmations of the predictions. And if the predictions are contradicted by empirical observation, then we have to go back to step 2, which once again is to form a testable, unifying hypothesis to explain these observations. That's the scientific method, okay? We learned that in school. It's probably been a long time since we've talked about it, but that's what it is. Okay, that's fine. You know, but the issue here is with the fact that the scientific method actually assumes a number of things. We have to assume that we can generally trust our senses to make observations. This is both individually and collectively. We have to assume that we as individuals can know the world and the way it works in some meaningful fashion. If we want to make a hypothesis about something, we're using some kind of reason and logic. And I still have yet to see a materialist or a physicalist demonstrate how logic is anything but abstract and immaterial. Bitbutter's tried, others have tried, and I think that they've failed. But in those few cases where the brave ones go out on a limb and say that it's purely internal and that logic is nothing more than chemical reactions, they're unable to say how or why one person's chemical reactions, you know, about logic and ideas and whatnot, are different or better than another person's. I mean, it's like, well, how do I know your chemical reactions are the right ones? How do I know that that's the proper way to do it, not this? You know, some of them say, well, maybe the majority consensus, and some of them say, you know, it depends on which group of chemical reactions best aligns with what reality is. See, if we go with that, you know, we're still stuck with a problem here. We're stuck trying to, we're stuck with the very thing that's under dispute. Well, that's called a conundrum. That's what that is, friends, as a conundrum. Now, Beau goes on to say that many people do not accept as science certain hypotheses that do, in fact, hit the mark on the of scientific accuracy. Now, I don't know where he got the idea that I denied this. I mean, I don't know many people who do. But I'm most certainly not among that group. That's not the problem. See, the problem here, folks, is that the people debating are working from different assumptions. And these differences don't allow them to process the information the exact same. One guy's looking through rose-colored glasses. Another guy's looking through, a kaleidoscope. Okay, back to Beau. Beau then pulls something, in my opinion, that was rather interesting. He actually went so far as to deny the uniformity of nature. Okay? This poses quite a problem, really. If nature, if it's not uniform, then I'm curious to know how our senses, like observations and predictions and all that, how that's meaningful. I'm just curious. How is it even meaningful? If there's no basis for this, then how can we rest assured that the two of us can have meaningful communication? How do we even know we are having communication? We're talking about quality within nature. Okay, we're talking about uniformity. We're talking about something that is preserving it from within or from without. And if this goes missing, then so do all of those things that are necessary for knowledge to be even possible. Communication is out the window. Gone. So, Beau insisted that the uniformity of nature is a hypothesis. Okay? It's not a assumption or presupposition. It's a big fancy word. But the problem here, I think, Beau, is that the very idea of a hypothesis relies upon the uniformity of nature. It does. I mean, how can you observe and predict in a world that lacks any uniformity? Uniformity is the framework. It's like the picture frame and everything in it wherein we work. It may be recognized and acknowledged, but it wasn't pulled out of a magic hat. It didn't come out of nowhere like, atheists claim the universe did. We live and move and we have our being in this thing called uniformity, this uniformity of nature. But at least he was consistent here. At least he was consistent. He actually talked about the possibility that the world could literally turn on its head. Down might become up. The sun may not rise. Gravity could cease to exist. Seriously, folks, think about this for a second. Now, what I would like to know, in the instance this would actually happen, I would like to know if all of a sudden people just started flying in the air and down became up and the sun didn't rise anymore and everything else, I'd like to know whether or not, he would look for a reason why it happened. I mean, would he? Because if he did, even during, times of these really bizarre and abnormal occurrences, then he's looking at life through the lens of someone who believes in the uniformity of nature, and yet he denies it. But if all of this stuff happened, let's say that all of a sudden people started floating around, there was no more gravity, and the sun didn't rise, would he actually seek to find out why? Would he believe that there's even a reason, or would he just throw up his hands and say, oh, whatever, no uniformity, blah, blah, blah? Of course not. Lastly, he asked what the scientific method has to say about things like infallibility and knowledge and absolutes. Now, the first and the last I don't think are really necessary to the conversation, though I think we can rest confident beyond a reasonable doubt on a number of things. But the middle one, though, knowledge, the issue of knowledge, I think that this is something altogether different. I think this is important. I mean, I hope so. I mean, that's what we're trying to do here. So when we talk about observing things, are these things we don't know? Is there no knowledge in our observations? Is knowledge totally excluded from predictions? Maybe knowledge isn't like a participant in the process of verifying hypothesis, some kind of hypothesis. No, see, knowledge, Beau, runs through the entire thing. I dare you, attempt doing it without knowledge. Don't know what you observe. Just try. Don't know what you observe. Don't know how to interpret what you observe. Don't know what you predict. Don't know how to determine, whether or not your hypothesis holds up. Don't know whether or not to return back to the hypothesis stage. Just saying it sounds ridiculous. The whole thing is absurd. I mean, it's absolutely absurd to say this kind of thing. Now, you may wish to stay clear of words like induction and knowledge, but these things cannot be avoided, no matter how hard he tries. When you make a prediction, you're using inductive reasoning. When you observe and make a hypothesis, you're employing knowledge. Run all you want, Beau. You can't get away. I mean, I hope that, listen, folks, I hope that if there's one thing you get from this radio program, maybe more than anything, I mean, I love talking politics and different things, but I really hope you understand this, is that atheists simply don't have a leg to stand on. They don't. And they end up having to say crazy stuff like this. Just ridiculous. Just ridiculous.